G'day everyone. Thanks for joining me for the lightning talk on accelerating data transformation, best practices for governance, agility, and innovation. My name's Kevin Wilson, and I'm the Practice Director for Data and AI at NCS Australia. I've over 25 years experience with international consultancies across the UK, Ireland, and now Australia, and I've been delivering data transformation projects across a diverse number of industries. Just before we get started, for those of you who don't know, NCS is actually a leading technology services consultancy that's passionate about helping organizations unlock value through digital innovation, cloud, data and analytics, and AI. And we do this across enterprise organizations and governance agencies. We have a presence spanning Singapore, Australia, Greater China, and beyond. And we're also one of the fastest growing Databricks partners in the APAC region, with over 220 consultants certified and trained, and we're also on track to becoming an elite partner this quarter. All right, let's get started. Okay, over the next 18 minutes, I'm excited to share some practical insights and real-world experiences from our work. I've delivered many data projects across those government agencies and enterprise organizations across Sydney, Singapore, and Australia. In fact, some of our clients are actually here and shared some of their stories and sharing some of the stories at the summit. This is actually a really big topic, so I've distilled it down to the most impactful areas that can really set you up for success, not just from a technical perspective, but in terms of driving real business value. I'm not going to spend too much time going through the agenda there. We'll just get stuck in, but there is a lot to cover. And a bit like my title, Accelerating Data Transformations, I'm probably going to have to accelerate through my content because there's quite a lot there. So fast and furious, buckle up and let's get going. All right, so we'll just quickly set the scene. I don't want to deliberate on this one, but these are some of the common data challenges that organizations often face and that might lead you down that path of developing building a data platform. And a lot of these have already been covered in sessions already. You know, even in the keynote this morning, the classic issue about data silos, fragmented data all over your enterprise. I do want to point out, though, a couple here, the lack of governance and data governance across your organization. Many organizations don't really understand what data they've got, where it is, and who's accessing it. And this can lead to data breaches. And, you know, there's always news reports and every week about organizations having data breaches. So this is a massive risk for a lot of organizations. Another one, what we see is this long time to value. So you may actually have a data platform or a data warehouse or some form, but you're not getting any business value, or you're not getting the perceived business value out of your platform. And that may be because it's difficult to use. There's still a large dependency on your IT team to generate those reports. So if any of these sound familiar, you're not alone. So let's take a look how we can tackle some of these challenges and unlock the true potential of your data. Right. Okay, so we see to truly unlock the business value from your data platform, it's not just about the technology. It's about getting the whole system working together. And we found that focusing on 5 key levers really drives impact. First is value alignment. So this is where we want to make sure everything ties back to the core business goals, where your use cases align to real business drivers. You can clearly measure success and show outcomes that matter. Then there's the data and AI culture. This is more than change management. It's about embedding data into everyday decisions and encouraging that mindset of curiosity, experimentation, and innovation across the organization. That's easier said than done, that one. That's a hard one. We'll touch on that later. And then data readiness. This is really about, where the Databricks platform comes in. Getting your data integrated, making sure it's of high quality, trusted, and accessible. This is a foundation for everything. So we'll dive a little bit more into that one in the following slides. And ways of working, this is clearly defining those operating models across your data teams, your business teams, and your IT teams, and those how self-serve analytical operating models, your data governance operating models, how's all this going to come together? And finally, iterate and scale. So we want to start small, deliver early wins, and use those successes to build momentum. This is where the change really starts to stick. Of course, some of these levers involve shifts in responsibilities, culture, and mindset, which is why strong leadership is absolutely vital. Executive support with a clear vision and a sponsorship help create the space and confidence to drive this forward. So when you combine that leadership with a value-led approach and a value-led and iterative approach, you can really energize the business and build trust and scale for long-term success. All right. Let's dive into how we actually set the foundations for successful data transformation. So I'm thinking about this from a large program of work where you have a data initiative to transform your organization. So we typically start off with a discovery phase. This usually takes around 4 to 8 weeks, and it's a critical step. This is where we explore those key levers that we talked about in the previous slide that drive value and how they shape the platform strategy and solution design. So we typically structure the discovery phase into 3 streams. So we'll have a business use case stream, and that's where we get close to the business, understand their current pain points, and their requirements, their use cases, and we start to prioritize those use cases and link them back to their business outcomes and their strategy. We need that alignment. From those business use cases, we'll start to identify the relevant data sources that are required, what data is actually required to support those use cases, and the reporting needs, and start to understand some of the business logic and transform logic. And this is going to start shaping our actual technical design. There's a second stream around data governance, and that's where we want to understand the maturity of the organization. What's their vision for a data-driven culture? How do they want to manage their data, and how do they want to share their data? And this shapes the operating model around data ownership and access control. And then finally, we bring it all together with the technical solution design. So from what we've learned in the first 2 phases, that dictates the technical solution design. Do they need, from the type of source systems, how we're going to interface with the source systems, what that ingestion framework looks like, all the way through to transform and reporting. When we go through this process, though, there's a few things that we kind of like to keep in mind or highlight. And one, I touched on it there, the use case fit. So we want to make sure that we're right-sizing our architecture. I often hear teams talk about we need a real-time architecture, we need to support real-time. But then when you go through this phase of really understanding business use cases and trying to align them to real business drivers, you're like, well, you don't really need real-time. Real-time's expensive. The architecture to support it can be expensive to build and maintain. So it's really trying to understand what are those business requirements and defining the right fit architecture for it. Not real-time, people do need real-time, not saying you don't need real-time, but and also defining what real-time means, or near real-time. Different organizations have different definitions. Design for security from day one. We want to make sure that your platform's secure. Where are you building it? What's the cloud landing zone? Does that exist? Is it secure? And can we securely provision our Databricks platform inside that landing zone? We may need to start there first if it doesn't exist, or it may need to be uplifted. Engineering. So we want to think about our team. Who's building this platform, and who's going to maintain it? What does a team look like? And what are their current skills? Are they stronger using SQL or Python? So that might shape how we want to transform our data in that ETL framework that we build, and particularly when we hand that over. So that's the last point here about operational readiness, thinking about day 2 from the start, actually. So this is a project. The project's not going to last forever. It's for a period of time, then you'll hand over your project to a BAU team. What are their requirements for taking ownership of the platform around logging, monitoring, and observability around it? So some key things we want to consider. All right. So I want to drill down on some of those key areas a little bit further, and then we'll take you through an end-to-end walkthrough. So something that's absolutely central to building a secure and well-governed data platform, and that's a Unity catalog. So you'll have heard a lot about the Unity catalog in the summit already, I'm sure. It's our control plane for managing access, lineage, discoverability, and governance across your lakehouse. It also helps enabling self-serve analytics and data sharing. That will come later, when we're building our platform. Remember, we're starting small and we're iterating, but you want to get these things, be thinking about these things from the start and setting yourself up for success in the future. We see that one of the biggest things to get right early is your isolation strategy. You want to plan how your workspaces, catalogs, and schemas are organized across your teams and environments. Ask who owns what? Where does dev end and prod begin? Getting this right up front avoids chaos later and sets you up for success. We also recommend using catalogs as a logical and physical boundaries. So you might have, say, HR data, and that's really sensitive, and only certain people will only be able to see your HR data, and that data will likely need to be masked as well. So we can manage that in the Unity catalog as well. We can set up a separate storage account if that's required for the HR data, and have it in its own catalog. And leverage the single permission model that Unity Catalog provides across both data and AI. It has its built-in integration into our identity access management system, so you can have that central access to manage your security and audit. This makes access controls really simple, clean, and secure, and we ensure that only people who have access to the data can see it. Also, the Unity catalog fits into your broader data governance strategy. So you might actually have an enterprise data catalog, something like Alation or Microsoft Purview, that's looking across your whole enterprise, your whole data estate. Those data governance catalogs can integrate into Unity catalog and pull out the lineage and the metadata that's in the Unity catalog and can be shared across your enterprise data governance one as well. All right, so a key takeaway here is the Unity catalog is a key design pillar that enables secure, scalable, trusted data across your lakehouse. Okay, the framework, the ETL framework, this is a big one. What we're looking for here is one that accelerates delivery, is easy for engineers to work with, and scales with the platform. So the goal here is to build a pattern-based configurable frameworks. So we're not reinventing the wheel every time we need to ingest a new source system or a new table, or there's a new business use case that comes in. So starting with ingestion. So the ingestion bit is where we're trying to get data onto the Databricks platform. And depending on the source systems and the priority of the source systems that we're going to ingest, which is defined through that discovery phase, we need to work out what the type of interface is. Does the source system push or pull the data? We've got a number of options here to get the data onto the platform. Databricks Lakeflow Connect is a great option. It's maturing. There's been lots of announcements about it already in the summit about new connectors that have been released, and then for some of your common enterprise source systems. We can use third-party tools like Fivetran or even cloud-native services like Azure Data Factory. But the key here is to try and build, ideally, for that accelerating transformation, a metadata-driven framework. So we can store information about source systems, the connections, the tables that we want to extract, their business keys in metadata, and develop a framework that can loop round and ingest those tables through a common pipeline, which can then be parallelized as well. Once the data is on the platform, that's when we want to start thinking about how we're going to move that data through our medallion architecture. Again, going back to the skill set of our teams and the type of logic and transform logic and complexity of the business rules, we've got options here as well. So we tend to be, maybe the last 4 or 5 implementations, we tend to use Databricks SQL, DB SQL, and we've been using the transforms using SQL. We've been leveraged at DBT, to be honest, and built a whole framework around that. We find DBTs is excellent for those complex transformations and building our expectations within the job going through. But also we've got DLT tables, which is maturing all the time, and that's a fantastic option if you're looking at that more near real-time streaming coming through onto the platform. It's a really light way of doing it. And typically when you're looking at that near real-time, your transformation logic is much lighter, and it's easier, and DLT supports that really well. There are limitations to DLT, so beware at the moment. And then once it's there, we need to orchestrate all this, so making sure our pipelines run end to end. So we've got options there with Databricks workflows, or we can leverage Airflow or Azure Data Factory, depending on where you're at. But the key there is about reliability, making sure we can build into the framework about retries, failures, and logging and auditing. So, yeah, so for the framework there, it's about having that pattern-based reusable frameworks to make that transformation much more scalable and sustainable. Right. One of the most overlooked areas that's absolutely critical, parts of the data platform of a build is testing. And this is how we build trust in the data and avoid those oh crap moments, to be honest. I like to think about testing across those 3 principles, 3 lenses. From principles, we need to test with the business in mind. What are the risks if the data is wrong? We want to prioritize the test effort to the most important high-risk areas within your business. We're not probably going to be able to test absolutely everything across there. So let's prioritize it, take a risk-based approach. We want to test early and test often. And wherever you can, automate, because automation not only saves time, it helps with consistency at scale. And then we need to think about our different types of testing. It's not just unit testing, our integration testing. Once we get the data, our platform, we're developing it, get it up into that test environment. How do we get our data into that our code into that test environment? That's coming from our data ops strategy that we were designing up front as well and implementing incrementally as we go along. And regression testing, performance testing, and then we'll cover the user acceptance testings as well. But to support all that, we need a strong test data management strategy. How are you going to get your production-like data? Can you get production-like data in non-prod environments? How are you going to handle PI data in non-prod environments as well? So it's really important to start thinking about that. And if you can, you may not be able to get like data in there, so you may have to generate synthetic data as well. So having this strategy, thinking about this up front, so when you get to that stage, we've got a team there or people there ready to go and start testing, so you can start accelerating that journey. I'll just quickly move on. I've got a quick story here where a client success story where we actually had a client who was taking around once the data was in SIT, it was taking around 5 days for them to manually test their kind of series of jobs. And then they had to do this every time a release was made. And they were going back, re-executing the same jobs, queries that they'd saved. We built this automated reconciliation or regression testing framework that was metadata driven. And it was using on Python, PySpark, and PyTest. And you could run the tests. We had common tests that were written in UDFs, which could be applied to many different tables. And we would have bespoke tests and queries, source and target queries that were stored metadata and could be executed. And they were compared and logged and reported on through a BI tool. This whole end-to-end regression test could be triggered from a pipeline and within the jobs, and we drastically reduced that manual effort from 5 days actually down to 4 hours. So we basically, that was 40 FTE hours every test cycle that we removed out of there. And it gave the team and the organization much more confidence and trust in that data. So if they made a change, they could quickly go back and regression test. Just conscious of the time. So another quick one here is about analytical workspaces, and this comes, I suppose, as one of those more advanced use cases. We've got the platform up and running, and then it's about how do we get further value from the data. This is an example that we did for a client where they had business domains who were quite advanced, and they wanted their own development workspaces so they could collaborate and create new data sets and merge data. So we created a process. There was a lightweight operating model process where business domains could request and provision these workspaces, and with the relevant security controls in place. So we used, this was all CI/CD driven, and it would be spun up, the workspaces would be spun up with the relevant access to the data that they were allowed to see in the workspace and controls. So we found this really helped drive that business value and enabling those business domains. All right. Just wanted to quickly run through the whole end-to-end. This is typically what we see, the phases, when we want to try and accelerate that initial data platform. We talked about the discovery phase. And then once you've come out of there, we're going to start looking at implementation. First thing we want to do is make sure that cloud landing zone is secure so we can provision our Databricks platform in there. That provision of the platform services, the ingestion services, and all the surrounding services that are relevant for that priority use case that we'll deliver would typically come next. This is where we might leverage our solution accelerators to get that spun up quickly. Some other key phases that we see there, data modeling is critical to this one. So I like to get our data modelers in early, the discovery phase, understanding conceptually, having that conceptual data model, maybe going down to the business domain model. You want the data modelers to start running ahead, and then based on the priority use cases that you've defined, and then start creating those integration models and your silver layer model and your gold model come later. Because we're starting small and iterating, we'll build out that MVP data platform, and that will have our first versions of our frameworks. Our ETL, our ingestion frameworks, and then we can iterate and scale. And then as we go along, we're iterating and scale, and you have an opportunity to, depending on the size of the organization, how quickly you want to move, you can actually spin out other squads to start building out those use cases. And then you start thinking about transitioning to BAU, and then it's an ongoing process. So I'll put that back if you guys want to. Right, so I'm going to wrap it up. Right, so let's bring it back to the core principles that guide a scalable, future-proof platform. First, lead with everything. First, lead with value. Everything we design should link directly back to business outcomes. It's not about the tech for the tech's sake. It's about solving real problems. That's why we want to focus on quick wins through MVPs, enabling self-serve, and build momentum, starting small and scaling smart. Second, build foundations, strong foundations. Reusable frameworks and configurable patterns help us to move faster, stay consistent as we grow. And governance isn't something that we bolt on later. It's baked in from the start. And finally, keep evolving. The business needs will shift. New platform features will emerge, as we have seen in the summit already. So we design for change, review regularly, adapt continuously, and embrace new capabilities when the time is right, and it's never set and forget. All right, that's a whirlwind tour, so you can unbuckle your seatbelts now, and thanks so much for your time today. It's been great to share some of these experiences, and if you've got a chance, if you can complete the survey, that would be awesome.